this 2-hour English Vocabulary Masterclass, you'll learn 297 words to sound fluent and advanced in English. Welcome back to JForrest English. Of course, I'm Jennifer. Now let's get started. First, you'll learn all the medical vocabulary you need to know for your daily life. Let's talk about a patient. A patient is a person receiving medical care. We will all be patients at some point in our life, and I'm sure all of us have already been patients on numerous occasions. Now, right now, I'm not a patient. Even though I have a doctor, I'm not a patient because currently I'm not receiving medical care. This only applies when you're in the process of receiving medical care. There are two types of patients. You can be an inpatient, which means you're admitted to the hospital to receive care. If you're an inpatient, you're going to be at the hospital for a night, a week, or even longer. You have a hospital room and a hospital bed. Many inpatients are in an area of the hospital called the ICU. This stands for the Intensive Care Unit, the ICU. And this is where inpatients go to receive a high level of care. You can also be an outpatient, which most of us usually are, which means you receive care without being admitted to the hospital. You're an outpatient when you go to the ER, which is the emergency room. You're there to receive care for a specific treatment or illness. They treat you and then you leave. You don't stay overnight at the hospital. Now let's talk about common medical professionals you need to know. Of course, you already know doctor, also known as a physician. In North America, it's more common to simply say doctor, but it means the same thing. Most of us have a GP, which stands for a general practitioner. This is a doctor who treats a wide range of issues. So you can go to your GP because you have a pain in your back, or because you have a cold or a throat infection or an eye issue, a wide range of issues. You can go to your GP. A surgeon is, of course, a doctor who performs surgery. There are also many specialists, and this is a doctor who focuses on one specific medical area. A cardiologist focuses on your heart. A dermatologist focuses on your skin. A pediatrician focuses on children. And in North America, whenever you go to a pediatrician, at the end, they always give you a sucker because kids are always scared of going to the pediatrician, which is a doctor for children. So they treat you with a sucker or a small treat after. An optometrist focuses on your eyes. If you wear glasses, you frequently go to your optometrist. A dentist, of course, focuses on oral health and your teeth. An OBGYN. I have no idea what this stands for. I know it's a very long word, but everyone just says OBGYN. An OBGYN is a doctor specifically for women when you're pregnant or to discuss reproductive issues. An anesthesiologist. Don't let the spelling confuse you. Native speakers have difficult with the pronunciation of this. Anesthesiologist. Anesthesiologist. An anesthesiologist administers anesthesia, which is what makes you go unconscious before surgery. They also monitor you during surgery. A radiologist does the X-rays, CT scans, and MRIs. A psychiatrist focuses on your mind and mental disorders. Fun fact, both of my neighbors are doctors. One is a GP and the other is a psychiatrist. So if I need any help, both physically and mentally, I'm covered. And an ENT stands for ear, nose, and throat. So that doctor, an ENT, focuses on those three things: ear, nose, and throat. There are more specialists, but these are the most common. Of course, nurses are just as important as doctors. You can be a registered nurse, an RN. This means you have a nursing degree and you have a license in the specific area where you are a nurse. You can also be a nurse practitioner, an NP, which means you have more advanced training and you can diagnose and treat specific medical conditions. Let's talk about a routine checkup. This is something that all of us do, hopefully every 6 months or 1 year. And this is when you see your GP, your general practitioner, just to review your overall health. So you don't have a specific medical issue, it's just a routine appointment. We call that a checkup, a routine checkup. During that routine checkup, your GP, general practitioner, is going to examine your vital signs. Your vital signs include your temperature, your heart rate, and your blood pressure. Now you can also discuss any specific medical issues that you're having with your GP during the routine checkup. Of course, you can schedule an appointment at a separate time for a specific medical issue. If you are discussing a specific medical concern or issue with your GP, it's possible that they'll refer you to a specialist. For example, your GP could say, I'm going to refer you to an ENT. Remember, that's ear, nose, and throat. That's what the doctor specializes in. When you see the specialist, or even when you're with your GP, you're going to talk about your symptoms. A symptom is any feeling of illness that you're currently having or that you've had in the past that you want to discuss with your GP or the specialist. And when you're talking to the doctor, one of the very first things they'll say is, what are your symptoms? What are your symptoms? And then you simply tell the doctor what's wrong, what you're feeling that isn't right. For example, I have a lot of back pain, my left arm is sore, my feet are numb, which means you can't feel your feet. If they're numb, you can't feel them. My vision is blurry, which means you can't see very well. Or you could say, I feel nauseous. Nauseous, that's the feeling you get when you're on a roller coaster. I feel nauseous. Those are just some symptoms you may be experiencing. You can experience or have a symptom. There are, of course, many, many other symptoms that you could have and that you would discuss with your GP or specialist. After listening to your symptoms, the doctor might want to do some diagnostic tests. These are tests or an exam to determine the existence or the absence of a specific medical condition, disease, or illness. Common examples of diagnostic tests are an MRI, an X-ray, or a CT scan. After these diagnostic tests, the doctor will have a diagnosis, which is a judgment about what the illness or medical problem is. Then you can discuss the treatment options. These are the different courses of action that you can take to address the medical issue or the different treatments available. If the treatment option includes medication, well, then the doctor will write you a prescription. A prescription is a written order, or in our modern world, most likely an electronic order for a specific medical treatment like a drug or a specific pill. You can take your prescription to a pharmacy, because at the pharmacy, of course, there'll be a pharmacist, and a pharmacist fills the prescription, which just means they provide you with the medical treatment. On the prescription, it will tell you what the dosage is, and this is information the pharmacist needs. The dosage is the amount or quantity of the medical treatment, like a specific drug. So how much of that drug are you getting, and what is the quantity of the active drug in each pill that you get? That's the dosage. The pharmacist will also talk about any side effects. So the side effects of a specific medical treatment, those are the unintended consequences. So if you take a pill, it might cause headaches, but it's trying to treat your sore arm, but then it causes a headache. So that's the side effect of the pill. Any unintended consequences or adverse reactions, those are the side effects. And then later, you can schedule a follow-up appointment with your GP or specialist to discuss if your symptoms have been relieved at all, if the course of action, the treatment is working, if there needs to be any changes to the dosage, a different prescription. You can discuss all of that with your GP or specialist at a follow-up appointment. Are you enjoying this lesson? If you are, then I want to tell you about the Finally Fluent Academy. This is my premium training program where we study native English speakers from TV, movies, YouTube, and the news so you can improve your listening skills of fast English, expand your vocabulary with natural expressions, and learn advanced grammar easily. Plus, you'll have me as your personal coach. You can look in the description for the link to learn more, or you can go to my website and click on Finally Fluent Academy. Now let's continue with our lesson. Amazing job. Now you'll learn 30 advanced phrases for your IELTS speaking. You can also use these phrases in your daily life. Of course, on the IELTS, they're going to ask you, where do you live? You can say, I was born and raised in Winnipeg. That's where I was born and raised. Did you know that? I was born and raised. To be born and raised in. Now here your verb is to be, so of course you need to conjugate it in the past simple because it's a completed past action. I was born and raised in, and then you can state your city or your country. Now don't worry about taking notes because I summarize everything in a free lesson PDF. You can look in the description for the link. You can add on to this to make it sound more complex, to make you sound more advanced. I was born and raised in Winnipeg, but now I live in Ottawa. Go even further and say, I've lived here for over 10 years. Now notice I used the present perfect. You can also use the present perfect continuous only for the verbs live, work, and study. And this is for an action that started in the past and continues until now. So in the present perfect continuous, I've been living here for over 10 years. You can use for plus the specific number of years. You can even say 4 years, several years, many years, a number of years. All of those are possibilities. Now let's move on to tell me about your work. You can say, I'm an engineer. I know this is a very simple sentence, but most students get it wrong because they forget the article. You must use an article before your job title. Most likely you're going to use a or an, but it is possible to use the article the. This is when there is only one position in the organization and you have that one position. For example, I'm the executive director. So there's only one executive director, and that's me. Now, if we use the, it's more common to explain what the organization is or what the company is. But if you include just your job title with a or an, you can, but you don't need to. But if you use the, make sure you state your organization. Now add to this and add a general statement about your specific job. Being an engineer is rewarding. Notice here, being starts the sentence because it's a gerund statement. Gerund statements will absolutely make you sound more advanced. You could say, I love using my analytical skills to solve complex problems. Love is a verb of preference, so you need the verb of preference plus a gerund. Love using. You could say, I enjoy collaborating with my team. Enjoy is a verb of preference, so you need the gerund. I enjoy collaborating with my team and brainstorming unique solutions to complex problems. So sure, you could say brainstorming solutions to problems, but adding adjectives makes you sound more advanced. You just mentioned something positive about your work. Why not make a contrasting statement and start with however? This is a transition word that we use to make a contrast, and using transition words will make you sound so advanced. However, being an engineer also has its challenges. So before we had positives about being an engineer, however, and now a negative about being an engineer, a contrast. So now you can share one of those challenges, specifically another transition word to make you sound advanced, specifically, I work around the clock to meet tight deadlines. To work around the clock is an expression, and using expressions really shows you understand the language more at an advanced native level. And of course, to work around the clock, you can just imagine you work continuously, you work non-stop. Now let's talk about hobbies. You can begin with a gerund statement that expresses your opinion on hobbies. In my opinion, having hobbies is integral to living a fulfilling life. So our gerund statement is having hobbies is integral to, but then I just added on to that by expressing my opinion. So let's review some opinion words. Of course, in my opinion, in my view, from my perspective. Notice here, from my perspective, personally, I think that. Have at least 4 different opinion words. You can use these 4 in your vocabulary when you go for your IELTS. Now let's get back to hobbies. You made your general statement, your gerund statement beginning with an opinion word. Now you can state your specific hobby. I'm an avid hiker, or maybe I'm an avid cyclist, guitar player, tennis player, whatever your hobby is. So here the structure is to be an avid, and then you need a noun. And this means you have a strong interest, passion, or enthusiasm for that activity. Now you can make a gerund statement about why you enjoy this activity. Hiking gives me the opportunity to disconnect from my devices and enjoy the beauty of nature. Now notice that the gerund statement started with the verb hiking. You can also start a gerund statement with the noun. For example, guitar. Guitar gives me the opportunity to. You could say playing guitar, so you're using the verb form or the noun form with guitar. Both are correct. Now let's say you don't have any hobbies. Don't worry, you can still answer this question in a very advanced way. You can say, until now, my focus has been on my career. However, I'm considering taking up, and then an activity, taking up drawing. So notice we have our present perfect. My focus has been, because the action started in the past and continues until now. Take up is the phrasal verb we use specifically with hobbies and activities to mean start. And notice consider plus gerund. I'm considering, that's in the present continuous. I'm considering taking up. take is in the gerund because consider plus gerund. You could also say, however, I'd love to take up drawing. The expression here is I would love and then infinitive. Perhaps it's simpler to remember and it still sounds advanced, so feel free to use this alternative. Now you can still add on a gerund statement about drawing, but use the future simple because you're not doing the activity right now. Drawing will give me the opportunity to disconnect. You could say, I'm confident that, or I'm hopeful that drawing will give me the opportunity to disconnect. You will sound very advanced. Now let's move on to tell me about your family. You can say, I'm from a close-knit family. Close-knit. Notice that pronunciation, close-knit. This is an adjective that describes the family. Now, this is the same as saying, my family and I are very close. My family and I. This is the subject we. My family and I are very close. You can say, everyone in my family gets along because everyone is conjugated as a singular. Everyone gets along really well, or use extremely well to sound more advanced. Here's a great expression. Everyone says, I take after my mom in looks, and I take after my dad in personality. When you take after someone, it means that you resemble them physically. So if you have a photo of you and your mom and people say, oh, I see the similarities, you take after your mom because your mom came first, and maybe your mom takes after your grandmother, etc. But for personality, you can use this as well. So maybe your dad is very funny and you are very funny, so you take after your dad in personality. A great phrasal verb to use on the IELTS to sound very advanced. Now let's move on to talking about travel. You can say, I'd love, I would love, I'd love the opportunity to see Egypt, to travel to. Notice, travel to Egypt, but see Egypt, visit Egypt. So know when certain verbs require additional prepositions. Travel to a location, visit a location. If I could travel anywhere, I'd choose Egypt. This is our second conditional because it's hypothetical. And notice we have modal plus base verb. Don't use the infinitive, modal plus base verb. Of course, you can use a gerund statement. Visiting Egypt is at the top of my list. Imagine you have a list of places you want to visit and Egypt is at the top. You can make this more advanced by using the present perfect. Traveling to Egypt has been at the top of my list for as long as I can remember, an action that started in the past and continues until now. Now, why not use an opinion word? From my perspective, the pyramids are one of our world's greatest treasures. So you're sharing an opinion that reinforces why you want to visit Egypt. You can go on and say, and I'd revel in the opportunity to see them with my own eyes. The expression is to revel in the opportunity and then your infinitive, to see them. This is a very advanced way of saying, I would thoroughly enjoy seeing the pyramids. Now, as a bonus, let me share some phrases that you can use when you want to clarify your answer. So you're answering and you realize that the words aren't coming out very well. You can say, what I'm trying to say is, and then you can change your thought. You can express your thought a different way. What I mean is, what I'm getting at is, What I'm trying to get at is to put it another way, in other words, and then you communicate your idea. I suggest memorizing 4 of these because they will be very helpful when you're taking your IELTS. Let's keep going, and now you'll learn 50 important travel phrases. So your bags are packed and you're ready to visit North America. Let's talk about all the phrases that you need, starting with greetings. Now, as a tourist, you're going to be using these greetings when you go to stores, restaurants, or interact with service providers, like when you rent a car or book a tour. You can simply say hello, because for more impersonal interactions, when you don't know the person socially, we just say hello. That's the standard greeting in these situations. You could also say hi there. So add there. Hi there. Hi there. When you go into a restaurant, a store, hi there. Of course, you wouldn't wave. I'm just doing that. Well, I guess you could.
Hi there.
Hello?
Now, time specific, you could say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Don't say good night, because that's what we use before you go to sleep. So after 4 to 6 p.m., you can say good evening. Now, only for morning, native speakers, we drop the good and we just say morning, morning, but we don't say afternoon. You always say good afternoon, good evening, but you can simply say morning, morning. Now, after your greeting, you can state your reason for your visit. So if you're at a restaurant, you can say, hi there, we have a reservation under Forrest. Usually the reservations are made under your last name for 7 p.m. You could include the time, but you don't need to because the reservation will have the time. Or you could approach a booth and say, good morning, could you please tell me when the next ferry to Staten Island comes? Notice how I use could you please? That's to sound more polite. Now, don't worry about taking notes because I summarize everything in a free lesson PDF. You can look in the description for the link. How about this one? Excuse me, do you carry sunscreen? Do you carry? You're asking the store if they have. Do you carry sunscreen? Now notice, excuse me. This isn't necessarily a greeting, but it's what we use to get someone's attention. So if the store person is stocking a shelf, you can say, excuse me, and then they will stop what they're doing and look at you. So it's used to get attention. Now, technically, you can say, pardon me, do you carry sunscreen? But pardon me isn't very common in North America in this context. In North America, we use pardon me if we don't understand something. So if someone's talking to me and maybe there's a lot of background noise, I might say, pardon me, to ask them to repeat themselves. But we don't really use it to get someone's attention, so just use excuse me to get someone's attention. Now let's review all the phrases you need if you don't understand someone or if you don't hear them because there's a lot of background noise or maybe they just spoke very quietly. Like I said, pardon me.
Pardon me.
Now you can also say excuse me, but it's more in a questioning tone. Excuse me? Sorry, I didn't catch that. Now you can always say, sorry, English isn't my first language. So you're giving them the information they need to know so they can adjust. Because if you tell a native speaker, oh, sorry, English isn't my first language, they'll naturally just try to speak slower or louder or in a different way to help you understand. And don't be afraid to say, can you repeat that slower, please? The person will not be offended or upset if you say that, so don't be afraid to use it. Or you can say, sorry, I'm not sure what means. that means, or if you know the specific word, you can say, I'm not sure what a transfer means. Can you explain it a different way? Can you give me more information? Can you help me understand? Or simply you can say, sorry, I don't understand. English isn't my first language. And they will naturally know they need to speak slower, louder, or explain it a different way.
Can you repeat that, please?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
As a tourist, you're going to be spending money at stores. So let's talk about the phrases you need. When you go into a store or when you take all of your items to checkout when you're ready to pay, you can just say, hi there, or any of the other greetings. Now, previously, the stores would ask you cash or credit, but this isn't common in North America today. It's assumed you're going to pay with a credit card. So they generally don't ask you about the payment method. They will probably just point at the machine and then you can tap your card.
Cash or credit?
Now there are some street vendors. A street vendor would be a small shop or something that isn't a physical store. It is possible that they only accept cash, but this is becoming less and less common. Basically, everywhere you go in North America, you can pay with your card, even the smallest street vendors, because they have a little device they put on their phones, and then their phone turns into a payment processor and you just tap your card on the phone. So even at very small vendors, you can likely pay with your card, but of course bring a little cash with you. You can ask, how much is this for one item? How much are these for 2 or more items? Now, after you pay, they might ask you, do you need a bag? Now, they might say, need a bag, or simply bag, with a rising intonation to show it's a question. Plastic bags are not used at most stores in North America. They are banned for environmental reasons. So if you need a bag, most likely you have to pay for that bag. Instead of plastic, stores use paper bags, and they're probably about 15 cents per bag. Or you can get a reusable bag, depending on the quality, $1 to $3. A lot of smaller stores, convenience stores, markets, they still use plastic bags, but the bigger stores generally don't. But you can always ask them, can you give me a bag, please? Or I need to buy a bag. Now, sometimes I hear students say, please, I need to buy a bag. And they put please at the beginning of a statement, but that is not common in North America and it sounds a little awkward. So put please at the end. I need to buy a bag, please. Please commonly comes at the beginning when it's the imperative. So you're giving an instruction. Please put the receipt in the bag. Put the receipt in the bag is the instruction, and you can add please at the beginning to sound more polite. You could also add it at the end. After you pay, they might say, do you want a receipt? Again, to try to be more environmental and save paper, they don't automatically print receipts. They might just say, need a receipt, want a receipt, or receipt. You can say, no, it's okay, no thanks, yes please. Now, right before you pay, they might say something really long that you don't understand. They may be asking you for a donation, which is very common. Do you want to donate $1 to the Children's Hospital? They might ask you if you have a points or rewards membership with that store. Or they might ask you if you want to sign up for something like a Walmart MasterCard or a points card or a membership. If you don't understand, just say no thanks. No thanks, because they're probably just trying to give you something additional. Now, if you go into a clothing store or a larger store, they will greet you and they'll ask you if you're looking for something specific. You can say, I'm just looking. I'm just browsing, but in North America, looking is more common. I'm just looking, thanks.
No thanks, I'm just browsing.
Oh, I'm just looking, thanks.
Or if you are looking for something specific, you can say, I'm looking for a small backpack. Where can I find men's socks? Do you carry sunglasses? If you're buying clothing, you can ask, where can I try this on? Where are the fitting rooms, the changing rooms, which is where you try things on. You can also ask them, what's your return policy, to know if the item is returnable or exchangeable. Now let's talk about dining out at restaurants. When you go to a restaurant, you can use your greeting, hello, hi there, good afternoon, table for two, please. Or you can state, we have a reservation under, and then your name, generally just your last name, under Forrest. Or maybe you want to make a reservation. Can we make a reservation? And they'll ask you when or what day, how many people, and what time.
Table for two, please.
Now, if you're staying at the restaurant, you can ask them, do you have any tables outside? Do you have any tables on the patio? So they mean the same thing. The patio or outside is an area that is outside. So you have inside or outside. Outside is on the patio. And if you're inside and you see this really nice table by the window, you can say, can we sit by the window, please? Are there any booths available? So maybe they're putting you at a table with chairs, but you want to sit in a booth. Just ask them, are there any booths available? If you have any allergies, you can tell your server, I'm allergic to shellfish. Or maybe you see an item, a stir fry with chicken, and you want to know, can you make that vegetarian? Can you make that vegan? Can you make that gluten-free? To order, just say, I'll have. I'll have the stir fry with shrimp, please. Alternatively, I'd like the stir fry with shrimp, please, but I'll have is way more common. Now you may want to modify your order. I'll have the stir fry with shrimp, please, but no onions. Hold the onions, without onions. They all mean the same thing. Can you add pickles? So if you want something additional, can you add pickles? Can you make it extra spicy? This is something my husband asks every time. Can you make it extra spicy? Can you put the sauce on the side? So maybe if they put a sauce over top, can you put it on the side?
Sauce on the side again, please.
Just know that modifying your orders is extremely common and accepted in North America. So don't be shy. If you want something specific, just ask, they will do it for you. And don't forget to ask for water, because as a tourist, you need to drink a lot of water. Can you bring us some water, please? They might ask you sparkling or still, bottled. Just say tap water. Tap water is fine. Sometimes the restaurants try to sound more fancy and say house water, but it's the water that comes out of the tap, which is drinkable in all of North America. So if you don't want to pay for water, just say tap water is fine. And know that water is free everywhere you go in North America. You can go into any place and ask for water for free. You might ask them, where are the bathrooms or restrooms? Either word choice is fine. Where are the bathrooms? Where are the restrooms? Just don't say where are the toilets, because we don't use that word for restaurants. Now, if you had a big meal and you didn't finish it all, you can say, can I have a to-go box, please? And they'll bring you a box and you put your leftovers and then you take it with you. Can I have a to-go box, please? Or you can say, can you wrap this up? So they will take your food, put it in a to-go box, and bring it back to you. Can you wrap this up? Can you pack this up? They mean the same thing. If they try to offer you dessert or coffee and you don't want it, say just the check, please. You can say check or bill. Just the check, please. Just the bill, please. Can you bring me the check or bill, please? Or you can simply ask, where do I pay?
Just the check, please.
Where do I pay? It's $25, right?
In North America, tips, gratuity, are rarely added to the bill automatically. So it's your choice to leave it when you pay. There'll be an option on the machine. It's not required, but it is highly expected. And a 10 to 20% tip, depending on the formality of the restaurant and the level of service, is expected. But again, it isn't required. Now, at any restaurant, cafe, or store, you can ask them, do you have Wi-Fi? Or is there Wi-Fi here? And if you know there's Wi-Fi because there's a sign, you can ask them, what's the Wi-Fi password? Now, sometimes the Wi-Fi passwords are just random letters or numbers, and maybe you didn't hear it, you couldn't understand it. You can just give them your phone. Can you put it in for me, please? Can you write it down, please? Can you repeat that slowly, please? Now let's talk about getting around, so how you move from one location to another. You don't really need to know how to ask for directions anymore because your phone has GPS and will tell you exactly where to go. But let me share some common phrases with you. Excuse me, do you know how to get to the Empire State Building? Excuse me, which way is Central Park? Excuse me, does this train go to Central Park? Excuse me, which train will take me to Central Park? And notice I used excuse me for all of them because that is the most common standard in North America to get someone's attention. You could also say, excuse me, do you mind taking our photo? Because that is the one thing that people still ask other people for. Not directions anymore, but excuse me, do you mind? Do you mind taking, with that ing, do you mind taking our photo? Excuse me, could you please take our picture? So you can say photo or picture interchangeably. And as a final tip, before you pack your bags and head to North America, just remember that North America is incredibly diverse, and we interact with non-native English speakers every single day, every time we leave the house. We go to stores, restaurants, our work environments, our social environments. We interact with non-native English speakers. North Americans in general are friendly, open, and accepting. So don't feel any bit of nervousness or shyness because you have an accent or make grammar mistakes. It will not impact your experience as a tourist. But of course, you do need to be able to communicate in a way that a native speaker understands. And all of these phrases will help you do just that. I'm sure you want to have small conversations like small talk, so now you'll learn 22 great phrases for small talk. First of all, you might be wondering, what is small talk? Small talk is polite conversation about unimportant and uncontroversial topics. Remember, unimportant. Small talk is supposed to be boring. Now, when can you make small talk? First of all, notice I said you make small talk. That's the verb you use, make small talk. I learned how to make small talk today. So let's talk about when you make small talk. Maybe you get to a meeting early and there are 3 to 5 minutes before the meeting starts. Perfect time to make small talk. You're in the elevator with a coworker or someone you don't know. Or maybe you're waiting in line at the grocery store or the bank. Or a perfect time when you sit down beside a stranger, like when you sit down on a plane and you're going to be sitting next to that person for 5 hours. You can make small talk. Let's talk about why you should make small talk. This will help you understand why it's supposed to be boring. Because small talk is just to fill silence. So if your elevator ride takes 30 seconds, you can go down 30 seconds in silence, or you can have 30 seconds of a boring conversation with your coworker or a stranger. The choice is yours. It's also to make the other person feel more comfortable. If you sit down on that plane and you're going to be sitting beside this other person for 5 hours, simply exchanging a few words will make both of you feel more comfortable. So now let's talk about all the phrases that you need to make small talk just like a native speaker. The first category is the weather. Nothing is more boring than talking about the weather, so it's the perfect topic for small talk. Now, because we work virtually now and you have members of your team all over the world, you can say, "What's the weather like in Toronto today?" assuming you're not in Toronto. So you can ask them, "Oh, what's the weather like in your city today?" Now, don't worry about writing down any of these phrases because I summarize everything in a free lesson PDF. You can find the link in the description. You can make a simple statement like, "Beautiful day, isn't it?" That's a great one with a stranger when you're going in an elevator. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" Notice you're adding "isn't it" as a question tag. You could say, "I hear it's supposed to rain this weekend." So it's supposed to, that's in the future. "Oh, I hear it's supposed to rain tonight, tomorrow, the next day, in the weekend, next month," any future reference. You can make a general statement, "I'm really looking forward to spring." And the other person will likely say, "Yeah, me too. It's been such a long winter. I know, right?" And then you just naturally have a boring conversation about the weather. Another simple statement, looks like another hot weekend. And then again, just like before, "Yeah, doesn't it? What are you going to do?" And then you can naturally start talking about the weather, or you can transition into the weekend, which we will learn about in just a second. One final expression for you. This one is a question. Is it still snowing? Now you can use this one if you have been in the office or inside and you're asking someone and you know they were just outside, or you might not know but you're assuming that they've been outside. Is it still snowing? Is it still raining? Is it still cloudy? Is it still sunny? And then obviously you use whatever weather is appropriate for the specific time. Another boring category that everyone loves talking about, traffic. Just ask your coworker or that stranger in the elevator, "How was the traffic? How was the traffic coming in this morning, leaving, whatever the time of day is?" Now, if you know the person takes a specific route, then you could ask them, "Did you get stuck in the traffic on Main Street too?" Because you know your coworker or the person you're talking to had to take Main Street. Now, even if this is a stranger, but you're at the airport, so they have to take a certain road to get to the airport, so you can still use this with strangers. You can make a simple statement like, "The bus was 20 minutes late today." So you don't need a car to use these. You can use whatever method of transportation that you use. Another question for you. Do you know when? And then ask something traffic related. Do you know when the bridge is supposed to be fixed? And this is a bridge that the person you're talking to will 100% know is under construction. Again, this could be with a stranger because to get to the airport, you have to go over a bridge. Now keep in mind when you're making small talk, you don't actually care about the answer. Remember, that's not the goal. The goal isn't to find out when the bridge is going to be fixed. The goal is simply to have a boring conversation, to fill time, to kill time, and to make the other person feel comfortable. Our next category, topical events. A topical event is simply something that people are talking about right now. It could be a holiday, a sports event, it could be a new movie, something on the news. It's topical, people are talking about it. So if it's the time of year of the Olympics, or just before, just after, and you're sitting next to a stranger on the train, you could just ask them, oh, what's your favorite Olympic sport? And the question will seem normal and natural because everyone is talking about the Olympics. Or if it's award season, you could ask, who do you think will win Best Actor? If it's a holiday, a major holiday, you could ask them, are you staying in New York for Christmas? Or you could ask another question related to that holiday. Around Thanksgiving in North America, everyone buys a turkey. So it would seem extremely appropriate to ask someone, even a stranger, have you bought your turkey yet? And it could turn into a really interesting conversation because they might have a story about it, or they might say, oh, actually, we don't celebrate Thanksgiving because I'm from, and maybe they're from a different country. And then even if they don't celebrate it, you can still have an interesting conversation. So it's a great conversation starter. Maybe there's a community event and you can ask them, do you know anyone running the marathon this weekend? And even if the answer is no, well, then you can still go back and forth. Oh yeah, me neither. I don't like sports too much. Oh, what do you like? And then it will naturally evolve. Movies are a great choice. There's always a new movie or a new Netflix show or even a new popular YouTube video. And you could ask them, have you seen the new Star Wars movie yet? And even if they say no, oh, what kind of movies do you like? Oh, you don't like movies, you like music? What kind of music do you like? And the conversation can naturally evolve. Just remember that small talk should be boring and non-controversial. Of course, elections are topical events, but you don't want to talk about elections when you're having small talk with a stranger or someone in the elevator. You should not ask them, did you vote yet? Who did you vote for? That is inappropriate for small talk. Our final category, the weekend, something everyone loves talking about. Now keep in mind, if this is on a Tuesday, you can talk about the last weekend. If this is on a Thursday, the future weekend, and if it's on a Wednesday, well, you can decide. You can talk about either one, past or future. So there's always a weekend to discuss. Did you do anything exciting this weekend? Now this is in the past, maybe on a Monday or Tuesday. You can just change this to the future if it's Thursday or Friday. Are you doing anything exciting this weekend? What are you up to this weekend? Native speakers love using this expression. That's in the future. In the past, what were you up to this weekend, being this past weekend? An easy one. Do you have any plans? Do you have any plans this weekend? Asking for a recommendation or advice, again, even if you don't actually want the recommendation or advice, is a great conversation starter. You can ask, do you know of any events happening this weekend? Or can you recommend? Can you recommend a great Italian restaurant or just restaurant in general or whatever restaurant you want? Or you could ask them, what's your favorite cafe near here? I love asking this question because I get to go to new places I would never find on my own. And I have tried some amazing spots just by asking strangers, oh, what's your favorite restaurant near here? What's your favorite cafe near here? You always learn interesting results. Let's keep going and you'll review economic vocabulary, and this is for both your daily life and to understand the news. This masterclass is divided into 5 sections: core economic concepts, market and trade terms, business and investment, employment and wages, and policies and government. First, let's review core economic concepts. Supply and demand. This is a noun. They're commonly used together, but they can be used separately. Supply and demand is the balance between product availability, supply, and consumer desire, demand, which affects price. And that's why it's important, because supply and demand often determines price. You see this with housing prices, with real estate. Housing prices are soaring because demand is high, people want houses, but supply is low. There aren't available houses.
So this year we've seen soaring prices and a sharp increase in sales.
Now notice the verb I used, soaring. The verb to soar means to rise quickly and dramatically. The verb is often used in economic news. Using this verb, you can say my English confidence is soaring, and that's hopefully what you're thinking and what these lessons help you do. So if you're thinking that, put that's right, put that's right in the comments. And don't worry about taking notes, because I summarize everything in a free lesson PDF. You can find the link in the description. Let's talk about inflation. This is a noun, and it means rising prices that reduce the value of money. So if you have $100 under your bed, in 3 years from now, that $100 could be worth less because overall prices are higher. So that $100 will buy you less things. That's because of inflation.
Congress should be focused on keeping inflation in check.
Generally, people say in day-to-day conversations, everything costs more now. Inflation has made groceries and rent much pricier. Notice to be pricey, but in my example, I used the comparative pricier. So to be pricey, this simply means expensive. So much pricier means more expensive. Now let's talk about deflation. We have inflation and deflation. This is also a noun. It means falling prices, often due to weak demand. Now, deflation, falling prices, it might sound good in theory, but it usually means businesses are struggling. So it isn't a good concept for the overall economy. Now, recession. You hear this every day in the news, and people discuss this concept. This is a period of economic decline with job losses and slower growth. Growth in the overall economy. You can say hiring freezes and layoffs suggest we might be heading into a recession. So notice that phrasal verb, to head into. This means to go into, so it means entering a recession. Now, a hiring freeze, this is a temporary stop on hiring new employees. Layoffs, this represents job loss due to company cutbacks. Let's talk about the concept of boom and bust. They are also commonly used together, but it's not required. A boom is rapid economic growth. A bust is a sudden downturn, so a sudden decline. Tech companies performed very well, thrived during the boom, the period of economic growth, but now many are going under in the bust. So to go under, this means to fail, to permanently close. Section 2, market and trade terms. Let's talk about a free market. This is an economy where prices and businesses operate with little government control. In a free market, competition keeps prices fair, but it can also lead to monopolies. A monopoly, this is when one company dominates a market with no competition, and this is not good for overall economic growth.
Is a plethora of choice necessary in a free market? I believe it is both a good and bad thing.
Now, tariffs, you hear this a lot in the news right now. This is a noun, and tariffs are taxes. They're taxes on imported goods, often to protect local businesses. Now, I said you hear this a lot in the news right now. At the time of this recording, Donald Trump is threatening to impose tariffs on many countries, including my country, Canada, and Mexico. Now, notice I used to impose a tariff. This is to officially force a rule, tax, like a tariff, or a punishment. Now, I also used the word imports. So let's talk about imports and exports. Of course, imports are goods brought into a country, and exports are goods sold abroad, exiting the country. Electronics are the country's main import, so that's the noun form, and sugar is its primary export. Notice I use main and primary. They're interchangeable and commonly used with import and export. Now, you can also use the verb form, and you can say the U.S. imports a lot of oil. So notice it has that S because it's the present simple conjugated with the subject, the U.S., third person singular. The U.S. imports a lot of oil while it exports agricultural products like corn. So oil is entering the country, corn is exiting the country. Let's talk about trade deficit and trade surplus. So a trade deficit happens when a country imports more than it exports. And then a trade surplus, well, it's the opposite. It's when a country exports more than it imports. So the country's trade deficit is growing because it buys more from other nations than it sells.
Is that we have a food trade deficit and food trade surplus at the same time. We ship cheap food out into the world, and we got to reach beyond our borders to import the food that's most important to human health.
Let's talk about a bubble. This is a noun. So a bubble is when asset prices rise far above their true value. The real estate bubble burst in the US in 2008. Did you read about that? Now, notice I used burst. In my sentence, it is a verb, but it can also be used as a noun. And to burst or a burst is the sudden collapse of those inflated prices. So inflated means they're bigger than they should be, and then burst is when they go back down to a smaller size. Section 3, business and investment. Let's talk about a market crash. This is a sudden and sharp drop in stock prices. So the 2008 market crash wiped out billions in retirement savings. You can also say the 2008 market crash happened when the real estate bubble, the inflated prices, when that bubble burst. So when it quickly collapsed.
Frankly, I think before the market crash of 2008, many Americans looked at Social Security as, it's greens fees. I'll take it at 62, so what if it's reduced? It's no big deal.
Now, of course, the stock market. This is the place where shares of companies, so a share represents ownership in a company, a share of companies are bought and sold. The stock market dropped today, or the stock market rose today. You can use both of those. And every day the stock market does both. It drops and it rises, usually like this every day. Now let's talk about a bull market and a bear market. Have you heard these terms? A bull market is when stock prices trend up over time. So it's not just today. It's over a period of time. So this represents a strong economy. A bear market is when stock prices trend down over time. So not just for a day or a week, it's a longer period of time. It's a trend. You can say investors made huge profits during the bull market, but now we're in a bear market and stocks are crashing. So to crash, this is a sudden and sharp decline.
You know, I can tell you, we've had a 6-year bull market. There are a lot of bull market geniuses out there right now who have just been piling into the most speculative stocks, and they've been rewarded for that.
Let's talk about consumer spending. This is the money people spend on goods and services. It's a key part of the economy. Now, when inflation goes up, consumers generally spend less. So you can say consumer spending shrank during Q1, but is expected to bounce back, improve, recover by Q3. Do you know what I mean by Q1 and Q3? Well, first let's talk about to shrink. This means to reduce in size or amount. And for Q1, Q3, this represents the fiscal year. The fiscal year, which is 12 months, but it's not the calendar year. The fiscal year is generally divided into 4 quarters, and those quarters are Q1, 2, 3, Q4, and each lasts 3 months. So Q1 represents January, February, March, if you use the calendar year as your fiscal year, which isn't a requirement. So let's talk about credit. This is money borrowed that must be repaid, and often with interest. So you can buy a house or a car on credit. Now, higher interest rates make it more expensive to buy a car or a house on credit. Section 4, employment and wages. Let's talk about the unemployment rate. This is often in the news. This is the percentage of people who are jobless but looking for work. So retired people, children, they are not in the unemployment rate because they aren't looking for work. You can say the unemployment rate dropped last month, showing signs of job market recovery. So it's a positive thing when the unemployment rate goes down, drops. Now, the job market, this is the availability of jobs and the competition for them. For example, with so many layoffs, the job market is getting tougher for new graduates. Remember, we already discussed layoffs. This is job loss due to company cutbacks. So companies aren't spending as much money.
The 2 fastest growing occupations in the entire job market are solar panel installers and wind turbine technicians.
Now let's talk about the cost of living. This is the amount of money needed to cover basic expenses like housing and food. So you can say the rising cost of living driven by inflation is making it harder for many families to afford basic necessities like groceries, rent. So notice I use to be driven by. This is very common in economic news. To be driven by, this means to cause something to happen. Let's talk about the concept of productivity. This is the amount of work produced in a given time. So productivity is a general term, but in the context of the economy, it's the amount of work produced. For example, companies are investing in AI to boost worker productivity, so boost, increase, and cut costs. So to cut costs means to reduce or eliminate costs. Now let me share a common idiom with you, which you might know, which is to make ends meet. This is to earn just enough to cover expenses, but not anything additional. So you don't have a lot of additional consumer spending. So you can say with inflation causing the cost of living to soar, to increase suddenly, many families are struggling to make ends meet, are struggling to cover their basic necessities. Section 5, policies and government. Do you know what the concept of monetary policy is? Well, this relates to central bank decisions. For example, setting interest rates. And they do this to control inflation and growth. So for example, you see things in the news like the Federal Reserve raised interest rates, so they made them higher as part of its monetary policy to fight inflation. Now let's compare this to fiscal policy. Fiscal policy represents government decisions on taxation and public spending to manage the economy. So you can say the government is using fiscal policy to stimulate growth by cutting taxes. So it's their decision on how to manage their resources.
The present over the future, including fiscal policy and what would be the equivalent of monetary policy. Rome's understretch over a period of time led to its rot far more than its military adventure.
Now, of course, taxes, you know what this is. This is money collected by the government from individuals and businesses. So here are some phrases that you, as a consumer, need to know. When are taxes due? Because you need to pay your taxes. When are taxes due? When is the deadline, so the final date, the deadline to file taxes, to submit taxes? So you can use to submit taxes, but we commonly use the verb file, to file taxes. Now let's talk about national debt. This is the total money a government owes. So it's the debt, the amount owing. There can be consumer debt, personal debt, but national debt is what your country owes. So you can say the national debt is soaring, increasing sharply, as the government borrows heavily to cover its budget deficit. So a deficit or a budget deficit, this is when spending exceeds revenue. Now, let me share another idiom, to be in the red or to be in the black. So both of these use the verb to be and in the. So notice that sentence structure. If you're in the red, it's bad. You're losing money. That's why a lot of companies will say, we're bleeding, because red, blood, and it's gushing out of them. It's like money is leaving them. We're bleeding, we're in the red. In the black, that's positive. It means the company is profitable. So you can say after years of being in the red, so remember, you need the verb to be. In this case, it's conjugated in the gerund form because our preposition of. After years of being in the red, the new technology helped the company cut costs, reduce costs, eliminate costs, and move into the black. So we commonly use the phrasal verb to move into to talk about the transition from one category to the other. Now that you have all the economic vocabulary you need, let's move on to political vocabulary. And again, this is for your daily life and to understand the news. Nonpartisan is an adjective that means not a member or connected within a group or political party. The community center is hosting a nonpartisan forum to discuss local issues. So this forum is not related to a specific political party. The opposite of that is partisan. This is also an adjective, and it's strongly supporting a person, principle, or political party. The audience was very partisan and refused to listen to her speech. And that's why I said this lesson is nonpartisan, because it's for everyone, regardless of political beliefs. So if you're excited to learn this vocabulary, put let's go in the comments. And don't worry about taking notes because I summarize everything in a free lesson PDF. You can find the link in the description. So we have nonpartisan, partisan, and there's also bipartisan. Have you heard this before? This is an adjective and it's supported by or connected to two political parties. And that's the word bi, which represents two. The government released a bipartisan public health campaign. So this campaign was supported by or connected to two political parties. Now, technically, tripartisan, which means three, or quadripartisan, which means four, and you can keep going. Technically, those terms exist, but they're not widely used, at least in North America.
Our long-standing nonpartisan tradition is to make decisions objectively, based only on the best available evidence.
There are concerns that highly partisan volunteers could try to intimidate voters this year.
But this is a bipartisan bill that authorizes more than $7 billion so that initiatives like Feed the Future endure well into the future.
Now let's quickly review the politics, because I hear students using this word incorrectly because of the grammar of the sentence structure. Politics is a noun. This means the activities of government, but it also means an area of study. For example, Maria is studying politics, the area of study. She's studying politics at university. Or perhaps you're at the dinner table and someone could say, let's not discuss politics, the activities of government. Let's not discuss politics at dinner. Now, don't confuse this with the word political, which is an adjective. This means relating to politics, but it also means interested in politics. And did you notice that the noun has that S on it? If you follow my channel, and if you're new here, make sure you subscribe. If you follow my channel, you'll know that I use political articles, news articles related to the study of politics to teach you, my students, English. But the lessons are non-partisan. The focus of the lesson is teaching you vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation. It's not to support or comment on a political party or interest. So remember, you can say Jasper's very political as the adjective, or you can say Jasper's interested in politics, the study, the noun. And of course, you already know politician. This is a noun, and this is a member of a government or lawmaking organization. Amit is a politician. Don't forget that article, because this is a job title and we use articles with job titles. Ahmed is a politician, but most of his life, he wasn't very political.
I wrote about politics, economics, and corporate affairs, and I could have chosen to specialize in any of those fields.
I wasn't really political. I was just a French horn player.
One newspaper from the early 1900s quoted a politician who said, "The Modis had always been loyal to the British Empire."
Now let's talk about a constituency. This is a noun, and it's a body of voters in a specific area, and these voters, they elect a representative. But remember, this word constituency, it refers to the whole body as one unit. The politician worked hard to address the concerns of his constituency. You could also say his constituents. So notice we have constituent, or the plural form constituents. This is a noun, and it is simply referring to a voter or voters in the plural in a specific area. So I could say, I'm one of your constituents. I'm one of the people who can vote for you if I choose, because I'm in this specific geographical area. Or a politician could say, my constituents will be pleased with this new initiative.
The constituency that he or she was running for an office to represent.
Now, in states where judges are popularly elected, they have constituents.
Now let's review some common vocabulary, and I want you to pay attention to the sentence structure. She voted in an election. So notice, you vote in, and then an election. An election, that's the noun form. She voted for Ahmed. So you vote for a person, you vote in an election. And of course, the verb is vote, so you conjugate that based on your subject. Ahmed is running for mayor. Notice you can run for a political position, in this case, mayor. You don't need an article here in front of mayor because mayor is considered a proper noun. You could also say Ahmed is a candidate for mayor, or Ahmed is campaigning for the position of mayor. You could add the position of, but you don't need to, so you could just say Ahmed is campaigning for mayor.
So nearly a third of these students voted in an election.
But they all just, for some reason, voted for the war.
And he starts running for mayor and doing really, really well in the polls.
It is just as illegal to make a foreign donation to a candidate for mayor or a sheriff as it is for the presidency.
So let's say it's election night and all of the constituents voted for their party of choice, their person of choice, and guess what? Ahmed won the election, and it was a landslide victory. This means that Ahmed won by a large margin. So the margin means the number of votes for or against. In this case, a large margin could be 70% of the votes were for Ahmed and 30% were against him. You could also say a clear margin. Using that word clear, you could say it was a clear-cut victory. Nobody can say that the results aren't conclusive. 70-30, that's conclusive. Ahmed won. You could say it was an underdog victory. This means that nobody expected Ahmed to win. He was the underdog. You could also say it was an upset. An upset. This means that everyone expected someone else to win. It was an upset. But now let's say that Ahmed lost the election. We could also say it was an upset. But in this case, everyone expected Ahmed to win, but he didn't. We could say it was a narrow defeat. Or you could say it was a close call. This means that Ahmed lost, but by a small margin. So maybe it was 51-49. That would be the smallest margin possible. You could say it was a crushing defeat. This means Ahmed lost by a large margin. So 70% of people didn't vote for Ahmed, only 30% did. It was a crushing defeat. Keep in mind that you can use this vocabulary about winning and losing for sports, recruitment, or any competition.
Germany's leading far-right party suffered a narrow defeat in regional elections in one of its strongholds.
Well, it was a close call. I mean, things almost didn't work out.
King Ben-Hadad I attacks from around Damascus, what today would be known as Syria, forcing the North to retreat in crushing defeat.
Now let's talk about to impeach, a politician's nightmare. This is a verb, and it means to formally accuse a public official of a serious crime in connection with their job. Did you know that in history, 3 US presidents have been impeached? This means 3 US presidents have been accused of a serious crime related to their position. Can you name 1 out of the 3? Well, if you follow my Learn English with the News lessons, I'm sure you can. So put one of those names in the comments. So 3 have been impeached, accused, but 0 presidents have been forced to leave office. You could also say that 0 presidents have been removed from their position as a result of the impeachment. Now notice here, impeachment is the noun form. It's talking about the accusation as a noun. If a politician is forced to leave office or removed from their position, this means fired. But we only use that term in non-political positions. So in a non-political position, you would say Yevgenia was fired. She's an employee and the company or the boss fired her. But for political positions, you can say removed from office or forced to leave their position. So 3 US presidents have been impeached, 0 have been forced to leave office. But did you know that former President Richard Nixon, he stepped down, he resigned before he was officially impeached? For a non-political position, you would use the word quit, or you can use resigned, but quit is more common. Yevgenia quit.
3 presidents have been impeached: Andrew Johnson, Bill Clinton, and Donald Trump. Trump is likely to be the first to be impeached twice.
Whether they're removed from their position or if they're otherwise disciplined due to concerns about harassment, bullying, retaliation, or hostile working conditions.
Well, anyway, it got a lot better, and by the time I stepped down, we had the internet bubble running, at high speed. It was marvelous. I mean, we were awash in cash.
I just mentioned former President Richard Nixon. Let's review the word incumbent. This is a noun, and it's the current holder of a political office or position. The incumbent president, the current president, isn't running for re-election. That's a story I did a Learn English with the News on, so make sure you watch it. So subscribe if you haven't already. Now let's review to lobby. This is a verb and is to try to influence a politician or public official. The company spent millions on lobbying efforts. So in this case, it's being used as an adjective. It describes the efforts. The incumbent president, the current president, faced impeachment, accusations of a serious crime, here it's the noun form, for secretly meeting with lobbyists. So right here, the word is a noun. A lobbyist is someone who lobbies. How about this word? Filibuster. Filibuster. Isn't that fun to say? Filibuster. Say it out loud. Filibuster. Do you know what this is? Well, it's both a verb and a noun, and it's a long speech that someone makes to delay or prevent a new law from being made. She filibustered the bill. So here it's a verb and it's in the past simple form. The filibuster, so here it's a noun, the filibuster lasted for over 10 hours. Remember, a long speech.
A filibuster?
And yes, it's a filibuster. The filibuster is on!
You're doing such a great job. Let's keep going and you'll learn 22 great phrases for negotiating. To negotiate. This is when you have a discussion with someone in order to reach an agreement. For example, I negotiated with the seller for a 10% discount. Notice grammatically, you negotiate with someone and you negotiate for something, a discount. You could also say we negotiated over the price or on the price. So here you negotiate on or over something, the price, the terms of the agreement. So how about we negotiate right now? You could say, Jennifer, I'll subscribe to your channel if you upload more videos. Good job negotiating with me. So put let's negotiate, let's negotiate, let's negotiate, put that in the comments. Now let's talk about negotiating the prices of goods and services, what you most commonly negotiate. First of all, these items are usually non-negotiable. Items at brand name physical stores like Walmart, IKEA, or shopping malls in North America are usually non-negotiable. Sure, you can try to negotiate, but don't be surprised if they say no or are confused because you're negotiating at Walmart. But don't worry, because there are many items that are usually negotiable in North America. More expensive items like real estate, cars, furniture, jewelry, artwork are almost always negotiable. Services like home renovations, landscaping, or consulting are usually negotiable. Or goods and services at independent stores or non-physical stores. For example, street vendors, booths, kiosks, or souvenir shops. Have fun and try to negotiate. First, let's talk about asking if a price is negotiable. This is a great place to start. You can ask, is there any room for negotiation on the price? Any room for negotiation? Is the price flexible? Now for this one, you'll get a yes or no. But you can ask, how flexible is the price? So you're assuming the answer is yes, and you just want to know to what degree. How flexible is the price? This is a good one. If you want to be less aggressive, you could say, do you have any sales or promotions that I should know about? So you're letting the person know you're trying to get a discount or a lower price. Similarly, you can ask, are there any discounts available? One of my favorites is, what's the best price you can give me? You could also say, what's the lowest price you could give me? Then the person knows, oh, you came to negotiate. Let's say you know a item is negotiable, so let's review some phrases for negotiating prices. Whatever phrase you use, my best advice is always try to provide a reason why you should get a discount, why the person should negotiate with you, and make it a win-win for both parties. Then you're more likely to get a yes. If I buy 2, can you give me 30% off? Another tip, always ask for more of a discount than you expect. So if you would be happy with a 10% discount, we'll ask for a 30% discount. Notice the grammar here. We have if plus subject plus present simple, followed by can plus subject plus base verb to form the question. Let's say you're buying a car. You could say, if I buy this at full price, can you give me free maintenance for 1 year? Now, free maintenance could be worth more than a 5 or 10% discount, so that's a great way to make it a win-win. If I pay cash, can you give me 15% off? In North America, 10 to 15% tax is added to the sticker price, the price you see. Tax is not included. So negotiating 10 to 15%, the amount of the taxes, is a great place to start. Here's a nice win-win. If I give you a great review on TripAdvisor, can I get this for $100? So you let the seller know what price you want to pay. Another way to make it a win-win is just compliment the seller. This is beautiful, but it's out of my budget. Would you accept $250? You could also use will you accept.
Oh, Pamela, it's beautiful, but it's a little out of my price.
Would is for possibility and will is for certainty. With negotiating, it is more common to use would. Would you accept? Would you give me? You can also use would you be willing to, which I know is a longer structure, but it's very common. Would you be willing to accept $300 if I recommend your store to others? Pay attention to this sentence structure. Would, subject, be willing, infinitive. And then next we have our if clause. If, subject, present simple. Now let's review some phrases to say that something is non-negotiable. Maybe you're the seller and you can use these phrases, or you're the buyer, but you need to be prepared when you hear these phrases from the seller. Generally, sellers will not be offended if you try to negotiate unless you try to offer them an extremely low price that is just offensive. But they'll be friendly and probably say something like, sorry, I'd love to help you, but our prices are non-negotiable. Our prices aren't negotiable. Notice there are two different phrases: to be not negotiable or to be non-negotiable. They mean the exact same thing and both are very common. Here's a very natural one. I wish I could help you, but My hands are tied. This is an idiom.
Sorry, buddy. Wish I could help you. My hands are tied.
My hands are tied. This means I'm unable to act or decide because of external forces. So if the seller says this to you, my hands are tied, then most likely the seller doesn't have the authority to give you a lower price. They just work at the shop. They don't set the prices. They just sell you the item. Someone else controls the prices. My hands are tied. This is a very useful one. How about this one? Sorry, I don't have any wiggle room. Wiggle room on the price. That's fun to say. Wiggle room. I don't have any wiggle room on the price. Wiggle room represents the ability to change or flexibility. So if you don't have any wiggle room, it means you don't have any flexibility. So it's another way of saying my hands are tied. I'm unable to do anything about the prices. The seller might say, our prices are already the lowest they can go. This is the seller's way of trying to reassure you that you're getting a good price and at the same time saying they're not willing to negotiate. So it's a powerful phrase. The seller might say, if I could, I would. If I could give you a discount, I would give you a discount. If I could, I would. Now, implied in this is, but I can't. But most likely they won't say that. If I could give you a discount, I would, but I can't. That's implied. It doesn't have to be said, but that's what this means. So you tried to negotiate. The seller said no. So let's talk about some phrases for you when you want to stand your ground. To stand one's ground, this is when you maintain your position, your beliefs, or your opinion, especially when you're opposed. So if you stand your ground, it means I said I want a 10% discount. I'm not willing to buy this without a 10% discount. That is you standing your ground. And often this is required to be a successful negotiator, although it can be quite uncomfortable. You can say to the seller, I understand. I understand your hands are tied. I understand you don't have any wiggle room. Whatever the seller just said, I understand. But that price isn't in my budget. That price is out of my budget. So you can use to be within one's budget and then just make it negative, or you can use to be out of one's budget. They have the same meaning. And if you stand your ground, it is possible that the seller will offer you the discount. They just wanted to know how serious you were. You could also say, in that case, I'll have to pass. In that case, the case being that you don't have any wiggle room or your hands are tied. Again, whatever the seller said. In that case, I'll have to pass. When you use have to, it sounds like a forced obligation. And pass means you're not going to buy the item. I'll pass, I'll pass. I'll have to pass.
I'll have to pass.
Unfortunately, I can't move forward at the current price. So move forward is to complete the next step, which would be to purchase the item, but you can't. Unfortunately, I can't move forward at the current price. Please contact me if the price changes. This is another way you can open it up and try to encourage the seller to keep negotiating with you. It's too bad. It's too bad we couldn't come to an agreement. However, I appreciate your time. So it's too bad, this is something negative. I appreciate your time, that's positive. So we use however to connect the two opposing ideas, the negative and the positive. However, I appreciate your time. Have a great day. As a note, make sure you end your negotiations on a positive note by saying something nice. I appreciate your time. Have a great day. Because you never know when the seller's opinion or position may change, and if you're polite, they'll be more likely to negotiate with you. You could say, I'm sorry we couldn't work this out.
Sorry, we couldn't work something out.
When you work something out, it means you find a solution to a problem. The problem being, what I want to pay is less than what you want to receive. I'm sorry we couldn't work this out. And then add thanks anyway to be more polite and end on a positive note. Now let's keep going and do something different. You'll learn advanced vocabulary in context. So you'll learn this vocabulary as we read a news article together. Our headline, Google unveils mind-boggling quantum computing chip. I chose this article in part because of this word, mind-boggling. Native speakers use it a lot. We use this word, this adjective, to say that something is so surprising or difficult to understand that it confuses the mind. You understand the information, but your mind just cannot understand it. It's mind-boggling, mind-confusing. For example, he started learning English 1 month ago and now speaks like a native. I understand this concept. I understand what the words mean, but the reality of this, how could that be? How is that possible? So you could reply back and say, wow, that's mind-boggling. That's mind-boggling. And the verb to unveil, conjugated in the present simple, because Google is it unveils, the present simple with that S. This means to reveal or make known for the first time. So it sounds like Google has been working on this quantum computing chip for a long time privately, but now they've unveiled it. They've made it known to the public, you and me, for the first time. And for some reason, we'll find out, it's mind-boggling. Don't worry about taking notes because I summarize everything in a free lesson PDF. You can find the link in the description. Let's continue. Google has unveiled, so the exact same information here, it's in the present perfect, which is a completed action, completed past action with a result in the present. The result is now you know about it. Google has unveiled a new chip, which it claims. So by using claims, it sounds like this isn't fact. This is their belief, their information, but it isn't a universal fact, which it, Google, which it claims takes 5 minutes to solve a problem that would currently take the world's fastest supercomputers 10 septillion. I do not know what 10 septillion is. However, when I see this number, I understand that this is an extremely large number, larger than my mind can truly comprehend or understand how long this is. Do you agree with that? Because of that, that's mind-boggling, right? Google claims it will take 5 minutes for something that currently takes this many years. That is mind-boggling. Wow, that's mind-boggling. Would you not agree? If you agree, put mind-boggling in the comments. Writing things down helps you permanently remember this information, which is why I'm encouraging you to do this. Write it down, say it out loud. Wow, that's mind-boggling. Let's talk about septillion. This isn't a word you need in your vocabulary. Most likely, I've never used it before. However, I want you to notice this pronunciation because I hear students make mistakes with the ending of these 3 common words: million, eon, million, billion, trillion. So make sure at the end you have a eon, million, billion, trillion. Let's continue and learn some more mind-boggling information. The chip is the latest development in a field known as quantum computing. So here, generally, news articles, books, they will give you more information about topics that are not known to the general public. Yes, English is not your native language, so you might not know what quantum computing is. However, I don't work in computers. I'm not an engineer. I also don't know what quantum computing is. So the article gives us more information. which is attempting to use the principles of particle physics to create a new type of mind-bogglingly powerful computer. I'll be honest with you, that doesn't help me understand what quantum computing is. However, at least we have a little more information. So let's look here. What do you notice about this? Mind-bogglingly powerful computer. The meaning is the same. However, it's a different form of the word, which is a powerful way to take one word and then expand your vocabulary by learning the different forms of the word. So what is this? This is an adverb. Adverbs generally end in ly, and they modify verbs or adjectives. In this case, we don't have a verb. We have powerful computer. So mind-bogglingly, the adverb is modifying this adjective powerful to make it stronger. Well, to make it sound like it's so powerful that my human mind cannot truly understand it. It confuses my human mind. Mind-bogglingly powerful. That's how powerful it is. Google says its new quantum chip, if you wanted, you could add our adjective, mind-boggling, to modify the noun, quantum chip. Google says its new mind-boggling quantum chip, dubbed Willow. If something is dubbed a name, it means that's the name it's officially called. We use this specifically with products like the quantum chip or a car, any product, events, and nicknames for people. So we don't use this for someone's name, their given name, but perhaps a nickname. For example, Michael Jackson was dubbed the King of Pop. That was the nickname. That's what he was officially called by many people. We could say this summer, so you can think of this as an event. This summer was dubbed the Summer of Rain. So this sounds like it rained all summer, which was not normal. So we dubbed this the Summer of Rain. So the quantum chip is dubbed Willow, and it incorporates key breakthroughs and paves the way to a useful large-scale quantum computer. The fact that certain information is in quotations means that Google is saying these words. And this is important because if the media were saying these words, it sounds like it's fact. But if it's coming from Google, you understand that, okay, that's their opinion as the creator of the quantum chip. Let's review incorporates key breakthroughs and paves the way. So incorporates is another way of saying uses or integrates. And then of course a breakthrough is a major discovery or advancement. So it integrates key breakthroughs and paves the way to a useful large-scale quantum computer. If something paves the way, the something is the breakthroughs, paves the way to something else, the quantum computer. It means that X, the something, makes it possible. So it makes Y possible or easier to reach. So in this case, you could say the X is practicing speaking, and Y is feeling confident. So X, practicing speaking, makes Y possible. It paves the way. But notice it paves the way to, and that's why I have this gerund verb, because it's to is a preposition and it belongs to the expression. So if you use a verb, you need a gerund verb. You could also use a noun and say confidence, paves the way to confidence. And I started with a gerund, which is not required, but if you do, remember that this gerund is conjugated as it. And that's why in the present simple here, paves, I have this S. Let's continue. However, experts say Willow is for now. Okay, before I even go on, I know, because they use the word however, I know that something negative about Willow, which is the quantum chip, that's what it's been dubbed, called officially, I know it will say something negative, because that is how however is used. However is used to contrast. So it goes from either a positive to a negative or a negative to a positive. This last paragraph was very positive. Everything here sounded positive. Because of that, I know that now there'll be something negative because they used however. Let's find out what that negative thing is. Maybe it will be mind-boggling. However, experts say Willow is, for now, a largely experimental device, meaning a quantum computer powerful enough to solve a wide range of real-world problems is still years and billions of dollars away. So this is the negative. Although the technology is amazing, has great potential, it's still years and billions of dollars away. So it won't help you and me today, and probably not for the next 5 to 10 years, because it said years. We don't know how many. Technology moves very quickly. It could be 3 or 4. We don't know. Let's continue, and notice we have a subtitle. So this is a secondary title within the headline, within the article. The quantum quandary. Quandary. Repeat after me. Quandary. The word quandary means a state of uncertainty or confusion. We often use this when you have to choose between choices. You have to make a decision and both have a negative outcome. For example, she found herself in a quandary. So notice in a, because it's in a state of uncertainty, in a quandary about whether to accept a high-paying job or pursue her passion. They both have their pros and cons. So she's uncertain, she's confused, she doesn't know what to do. We often use this as a reply. So your friend might say, our company party is on the same night of my anniversary. So you either upset your wife or you upset your boss. Which one's worse? So your other friend could reply back and say, that's a quandary. That's a difficult decision. Now, native speakers love using this fun word. That's a pickle. That's a pickle. So this is an informal, fun way of saying quandary. Pickle, the food you eat. That's a pickle. And we often add real to make it sound stronger. That's a real pickle. You've got yourself in a real pickle. So if you ever hear that and you don't know what it means quandary. Let's learn about this quandary, this pickle in informal speech. Quantum computers work in a fundamentally different way from the computer in your phone or laptop. They harness quantum mechanics. Now again, because this may not be a term that's familiar to the average person, it's certainly not to me, they'll give us more information about what this means. The strange behavior of ultra tiny particles. So that's what quantum mechanics is. To crack problems far faster than traditional computers. Okay, so let's take a look at some vocabulary here. Let's start with harness. If you harness something, it means that you're able to control something for the purpose of then using it. So it sounds like it's something that is difficult to use. So first you have to control it in some way and then use the power or whatever you've controlled. To crack problems, crack is a verb, and it means to solve problems. But we often use this for problems that are quite difficult. So you can think of perhaps code, computer code, or a combination code. I think we've cracked the code. So if you crack the code, you can either enter somewhere because it's literally a combination, or you know how to create a program on a computer. Or you can say, we've cracked the mystery. Again, the word mystery sounds like there was a lot of difficulty involved. We've cracked the mystery. We've solved the mystery, which was difficult. So they harness quantum mechanics to crack problems far faster. Far means a lot, so it's an intensifier. Far faster than traditional computers. Notice how I skipped this part because any information that is between two dashes, grammatically, you can remove this entire part and the sentence must be correct grammatically without that information there. Let's continue. It's hoped quantum computers might eventually be able to use that ability to vastly speed up complex processes. Okay, notice here, we have might and eventually. So adding these two words add a lot of doubt because might is a modal of possibility. I might go to the party means, I don't know, 50-50. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. Is not the same as saying I will go to the party. And then eventually is an unknown time in the future. So saying might eventually sounds quite unknown. So if your friend or a coworker says I might eventually help you, I would roll my eyes because that sounds very uncertain and it sounds in the far future even if they do help me. And we have our base verb, be able to, because might is a modal and you use modal plus base verb. Be able and then your infinitive. Be able to use, to harness that ability to vastly. Vastly is a modifier, an intensifier, to vastly speed up. So to increase the speed to a large degree. Speed up means increase the speed. Let's go back to the beginning and look at it is hoped. It's hoped. Notice here that the grammar is it. So this is a dummy subject. It's a placeholder. It means it's not attached to a specific individual or group of people. It just means in general. So you could say Google hopes, or it is hoped by Google, which wouldn't be the most common phrasing. It sounds more academic, more formal. Too formal for everyday speech. So Google hopes, but by saying it is hoped, it sounds like this is in general. So it's not just Google, it's not just computer programmers, it is general people. So it's hoped in general. In general, it's hoped quantum computers might eventually be able to use that ability to harness quantum mechanics to vastly speed up complex processes, such as creating new medicines. Well, that would certainly be positive. There are also fears. So this is a negative. Because of that, we could use that transition word. Which transition word goes from something positive, like creating new medicines, to something negative, such as there are fears. However, there are also fears. Adding that word, however, is useful because it really prepares you, me, as the reader for the information. But it isn't required grammatically. It's helpful to communicate, but it's not required. There are also fears. It could be used for ill. So it being the quantum computers or the quantum chip, it could be used for ill. In this case, ill means harm or damage. Now, this expression means that it could be used to cause harm. So here the verb is cause. To cause, because it's the infinitive, be used to cause harm, to cause damage. However, this expression, be used for harm, for damage, is very common. You can use either one, but just notice that slight change. Here you're using the infinitive, to cause, and then harm, but this is for harm, for damage. There are also fears it could be used for ill, for example, and then this is the example of the harm or damage negative it could cause. For example, to break some types of encryptions used to protect sensitive data. In this case, break has the same meaning as crack, which means to solve something difficult. to solve. So to break some types of encryptions, you probably know what this is, but encryption is information that's protected by a code, for example, a password, or there are very complex encryptions for sensitive data. Now, you could say, I cracked the encryption. So I solved it, which means I'm now able to access the sensitive data or the information protected. The average person would not say this though, because it sounds illegal. This is something a hacker, a computer hacker, or potentially a spy would say. But you could definitely read this in a book or see it in a movie. I cracked the encryption. And that is the end of our mind-boggling article. Is your mind boggled? Is your mind boggled, to use it another way? This uses the verb, and specifically the past participle. So remember, I said that learning different forms of one word can help you expand your vocabulary, but also help you communicate in the different ways that you need to. The meaning is the same. So you can say quantum computing boggles my mind. So this is the active verb. The verb to boggle is conjugated with the subject, quantum computing. My mind is boggled by quantum computing. What is this? The passive form of this sentence. Quantum computing is mind-boggling. The adjective form. Notice you need that verb to be, which will be conjugated with your subject. And then quantum computers are mind-boggling fast. The adverb form, which is modifying the adjective fast. So those are the different ways you can use mind-boggling. And that's the end of the article. So what I'll do now is I'll read the article from start to finish, and you can focus on my pronunciation. Google unveils mind-boggling quantum computing chip. Google has unveiled a new chip which it claims takes 5 minutes to solve a problem that would currently take the world's fastest supercomputers 10 septillion or years to complete. The chip is the latest development in a field known as quantum computing, which is attempting to use the principles of particle physics to create a new type of mind-bogglingly powerful computer. Google says its new quantum chip, dubbed Willow, incorporates key breakthroughs and paves the way to a useful large-scale quantum computer. However, experts say Willow is, for now, a largely experimental device, meaning a quantum computer powerful enough to solve a wide range of real-world problems is still years and billions of dollars away. The quantum quandary. Quantum computers work in a fundamentally different way from the computer in your phone or laptop. They harness quantum mechanics, the strange behavior of ultra-tiny particles, to crack problems far faster than traditional computers. It's hoped quantum computers might eventually be able to use that ability to vastly speed up complex processes, such as creating new medicines. There are also fears it could be used for ill, for example, to break some types of encryptions used to protect sensitive data. Wow, think of how many words you learned in this masterclass. Do you want me to make another lesson just like this? If you do, put masterclass, masterclass, put masterclass in the comments. And of course, make sure you like this lesson, share it with your friends, and subscribe so you're notified every time I post a new lesson. And you can get this free speaking guide where I share 6 tips on how to speak English fluently and confidently. You can click here to download it or look for the link in the description. And here's another lesson I know you'll love. Watch it now.